Welcome to our Savvy series. I'm Catherine Magana here with Rachel Ivanovich. And today we're going to discuss what you should do if you inherit over $1 million. So inheriting money, there's a lot of different decisions that come into play, and it can be life-changing, and there's a lot of emotions and thoughts.
You
and
mean
things
we shouldn't just have a party?
Right? I say, hey, let's celebrate. No.
$1 million.
I know.
Let's go.
It's something, and also sometimes if you weren't expecting it or didn't know about it, and there's just a lot of kind of moving parts. But we're going to kind of walk through some different steps to consider and take if you do inherit $1 million or more. And so the first step is take time to assess and avoid kind of those impulsive decisions. I think it's one of those things. Everyone's different. I mean, we've dealt with a lot of you're like, I want to celebrate.
I want to celebrate.
We have, but some that are just like, I want to get everything done right away, and some that need to process it. And then really, there's because of the taxes and all these different things, you do need to take the time and really like assess everything before you start making some major decisions.
And if you did just inherit $1 million, and before you have your party, call us.
Yes.
Because we'd love to chat with you about it. And our number here, you can reach us at 760-692-5700. And really would love to have that first discussion. But of course, go celebrate a little bit.
Yeah. No, and I think that it's the celebration of life. And I think it's one of those things that I think those that are passing along, they want you to celebrate them.
Absolutely.
But then it's also a matter of...
But it's a huge life-changing moment to inherit over $1 million. And we've had several clients that have had that happen, and they've called our office and really like, what do I do next? Like, what do I do now that I've lived, let's just say I've lived small, I've lived within my means, within my budget, and I don't even know what the first steps are. So I think taking that first step to consult with a financial or tax advisor, estate planning attorney is really a good first step.
Oh yeah, and having the team, because once again, anything that you do, there's a consequence. So it's like every little step you take, there's something that goes along with that, whether it be from taxes or dealing with other beneficiaries or family members. And so it's just and then also, did the estate that you inherited from, was it in order, or was there a probate? I mean, there's a lot of things you have to consider.
There are a lot of moving parts there, and I just came off of being a personal representative for a state. So if you find yourself in that position, it's a lot of work. And so if you are that beneficiary, also, assess your team, like Catherine said. Find your tax advisor, find your financial advisor, find an estate planning attorney, and really help them lead and guide you through, okay, what are the first steps, what are the middle steps, and then what are the final steps before you, spend all that money.
Yeah. And so another step is paying off high interest debt. So perhaps if you want to look at are there any debts that you have that are, based on the interest rates, are the rates high, or do you have a low mortgage? I mean, the rates are low. You just have to kind of look at, okay, what kind of debts are, do you have, and make sure you pay off some of those high interest-bearing debts.
Yeah, because this then will, once you've paid that off, it'll free up your cash flow and hopefully reduce some financial stress.
Yeah.
But you really do want to have a plan in place. Yeah. Once you've paid off those debts for, okay, now I've got this extra money. Well, there's never extra money really, but what do I do now? What are the next steps?
And then another step is to create an emergency fund. So if you didn't have an emergency fund in place, then making sure you have some money set aside to cover your expenses for the next 6 to 12 months, plus any other major expenses that you think that may come up. So you want to make sure that money's set aside for you. We actually had a client that we worked with a few years ago, and she inherited some money. Actually, both her parents passed away within a week of each other. And so that was devastating news, obviously, but as they were a little older, so it's one of those things that she
kind
was
of expected.
Yeah, you expect it, but you never want it to happen, especially with back to back with your parents. And so she came to us, and she all of a sudden, life changing. I mean, she before in her career just kind of had enough to live, but she didn't know she was going to inherit all this money.
Yeah.
And so here she had $1 million, and she's like, okay. But she was really mindful, and we talked about, plan, and, and it was a lot of steps in planning, but she didn't make those, she didn't go out and buy a new car. I mean, she didn't go do these big things.
She was mindful.
Yeah, she says, okay, she did one trip with her church, but then it was like, okay, I'm just going to I want to have enough. Like she wanted to make sure she was still going to work, but and she was getting closer to retirement age. And so it was just one of those things that, once again, not being proactive and saying, I'm going to go buy a new car, I'm going to go buy this and that. But
she invested for long-term growth.
Yes, and wanted to make sure that there was
and
enough.
Considered her goals and her plans and consulted with advisors. And I think considering tax-efficient investment strategies is really key too. For instance, contributing to IRAs or other tax-advantaged accounts. Perhaps you've got a 401k with your job and you haven't been maxing it out because maybe you didn't have that cash flow, that free cash flow, and all of a sudden, okay, now I can actually fully max out and take advantage of some of these employer plans that you weren't able to take advantage of before because you didn't have the other cash.
Yeah. And then also looking at, do you qualify for Roth contributions or not, or just kind of looking at some other ways of funding on top of those employer sponsor plans.
Yeah,
too.
or if you're a business owner, then all of a sudden, if you do have that extra then inherited money, you can contribute to SEP IRAs or set up individual 401ks and do the matching and so on and take advantage of everything that the tax code has to offer.
And then another thing that comes up is potentially considering setting up a trust for yourself.
Yes.
So, once again, we often have conversations about with clients before inheriting money, like should you have a trust?
Right.
And we're not trust attorneys, but we do have an estate planning attorney that we recommend, or we can review your trust documents but we make sure, if you do have a trust, are things titled properly, or if you don't, go consult with an estate planning attorney and make sure all of your assets are protected. And when you inherit a big amount of money, you do want to make sure that you have it.
And maybe you didn't have that trust before you inherited the money, and you didn't understand why you should have the trust, but it does protect you from probate. And if you want to leave a legacy and you have children, and or if you have got people that you want to leave the money for, having that trust makes it very seamless and just avoids probate.
Yeah, and probate can is costly and
very
timely.
expensive.
And so once again, if you want to, you have to wait, and there's certain documents and things you have to work with your estate planning attorney on. And
it's good to have your affairs in order.
Exactly. And then investing for long term, so making sure that, if you do inherit some assets, what we find sometimes is the assets you inherit, there could potentially be a step up in basis. It depends on how the trust is structured. But sometimes those assets you get might be a little more conservative than perhaps you need for your long-term plans. So just kind of looking at, yes, you get everything, but taking inventory and then saying, okay, now what's the purpose of the money and how is this going to help benefit you? And perhaps there are some updates or changes more in line with growth or preserving and having some appreciation.
One of the things that I've seen a lot, is when people inherit a large sum of money, clients say, I really want to give money to this such and such nonprofit. And I think that's fantastic. And there are a lot of tax advantage ways to do this. One of the things to consider is if you do inherit cash, or let's just say maybe even if it's invested, but not, there's no long-term gains there. And maybe you have other accounts that have gains. And so you can take that other money that you didn't inherit that has the appreciated assets, and you can donate those to a charity, and the charity gets the full benefit of the stocks if they've appreciated, but you don't have to pay tax on those gains. So instead of donating the money that you just inherited, which doesn't have that tax consequence, it might make sense to look at, okay, my full picture, okay, what do I have? What could I actually donate to my favorite nonprofit now that I have this huge inheritance?
Yeah. So definitely there's some planning and looking at
a lot of planning there, and they're donor advised. I mean, there's so many different vehicles, but it's case by case.
Yes.
So make sure you're talking to your advisors.
And then another step is to really evaluate your lifestyle. So perhaps you already have several $1 million, and how you have another $1 million added to this, and so maybe you decide to buy a second home or do a little more travel or get that extra car, but you do want to make sure, how does that tie into your financial plan? Often we do see a lot of clients that like to plan for like a big trip with their family or do something special. So those types of things, do need to get looked at and factored into your plan. So just kind of looking at, what's your lifestyle? Are there any changes, and what's the financial impact for those changes?
And I think even considering insurance and your estate plan, because now, as you said, Catherine, perhaps you already had a couple of $1 million. You've been a good saver then you're adding another $1 million or so. Things are changing, so you definitely need to talk to your insurance agent and your estate planning attorney, and just overall just assemble the team and have them help you and lead and guide you.
And review your beneficiaries. So now has anything changed with, once again, you have your trust, but there's some investments, IRAs and life insurance and things that you have, investments or resources that you have beneficiaries. So, is that up to date, or do you need to make any changes there as well? So sometimes it's, there's a lot of moving parts, and we are here to help and guide. And we know that, it also can be an emotional time.
It's bittersweet.
Too. Yes,
it's a bittersweet
yes.
situation. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there with $1 million or more, and reach out to your team.
Yeah.
We really want to help.
So if you'd like to set up a complimentary strategy session with us, you can reach us at 760-692-5700. And we want to thank you for joining us today and getting savvy about your finances. And remember to savvy up. Please stay tuned for important regulatory disclosures.
Savvy Women Wealth Management is an SEC registered investment advisor. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry and how we may be able to assist. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. As always, please remember investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Tax considerations presented may not be appropriate for every individual circumstance. A tax professional should be consulted before making any decisions about your tax liability.